tell you later.
All right, guys. So, David, can you start me a sign in, please? Thanks.
Very funny. It's really not that funny.
Okay. So, how did the estimating go?
We got through it, but
Wait, got through it?
that's about it.
That was. What does that mean?
Still alive and very
Yeah,
There were a
exactly.
few points that I had to chant the mantra. If it's all about the money.
Yeah. Right.
Otherwise, I would have gave up a long time ago.
So, do you feel? Well, we're going to find out tonight because we're going to actually do the very same thing here in class. That's what all this whole class is going to be about. Because what I'm hoping to do is to. I was hoping, and this seems to have worked in the past, that you guys go through the whole process of doing it on your own first. And then we see how it would be sort of really done, and hopefully some contrast between the two. For all I know, you all did it perfectly and exactly well, but we'll sort of like touch bases with that and see how that part goes. Before we get to that, were there any questions? Were there anything that sort of came up? I know Erin came up, and she actually posted in the forum about the calculating your hourly rate, even though I would never quote an hourly rate. What I like about that exercise is that it forces you to think about things like retirement and other issues like that. So it brings in another series of arguments that don't necessarily show up on an estimating calculator or something like that, but something that you need to take into consideration. And I know that Sophie actually commented in on that guy as well. Thanks. So were there any other questions, though, about the whole process when you guys were going through it? Was it seemed like it was pretty straightforward for you? Savannah, that's not looking straightforward to me, I've just got to say.
There were some issues.
There were some parts on the the Excel document that I didn't remember what it was.
Okay. Well, like I said, we're going to go through the entire thing tonight from top to bottom, so we'll see how that part goes. Other things, yeah.
Well, I had a question because when you put the terms and conditions, like I know you're supposed to fill in all those things, but you're not supposed to paste that whole thing in there, right?
The terms and that a lot of people would say that you do. Mm-hmm.
I just it looks so long, so I was like,
Well, that's why I've got my sort of abbreviated. Mine has no terms in it, but it definitely has conditions in it.
Okay.
So that's why it's a more abbreviated one.
I guess.
Might be worth your while.
Yeah.
But yeah, at any rate.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, any program you use when it says, do you agree to the terms and conditions? Those things are like
Oh yeah.
100 pages long. So
Yeah.
that being like 7 pages, it was like copy and pasted onto the bottom of it.
Yep.
That way you're covered.
Well, and there's something to be said about that as well. So we might as well have part of this discussion right now. Do you feel like you sent that to somebody, it would scare them off? Is that what your hesitation or reservation is about that?
Just it seemed like the wrong place to put it. I don't know why.
Okay.
I feel like I don't know. I almost feel like that comes after it, but maybe not.
Okay, well, usually the terms and conditions would go after. It would be the last thing on the estimate form.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
So
the stuff you may have made a mistake about, or sort of a misdefinition of what was going on in the top part. So we'll talk about that again. So that would actually be it.
That's what I need clarification on it.
Yes.
See, I put it before their signature agreeing to it. That way they had to at least.
Well, no, that part would be fine. When I meant at the end, I think what Savannah's saying. Let me just going to pull this guy up really
I'm not
quickly.
talking about the one you sign. I'm talking about the long ASMP one, like the whole terms and conditions.
Oh yeah, because the way we were supposed to plug it in.
Yeah,
Right.
I thought it was that's where you plug it, but I didn't. I was just
I just want to straighten this part out really quickly, just so everybody is okay with this. So guys, everybody take a look up at the screen really quickly here. So this would be the estimate form.
Yeah.
Okay, which is basically the part that we'll start here. And the whole idea of what you do here, that you're going to, again, these are the instructions, so those just go away. You would put all your contact information in here. We'll actually do that tonight. Then the date, you would put that in. This estimate, again, I would probably put that part more towards the end. But the assignment description, this whole part right here would be, again, what it's about. This is not terms and conditions here at all. Okay. Then the licensing agreement, this again would be the whole usage issue right here. So again, also not terms and conditions. And then you put in your fees and your expenses. All that happens. All expenses, blah, blah, blah. This total here, subject to terms and conditions attached hereof. So I would go in at this point and command all and copy those and replace this with that.
I got confused with the licensing.
Guys, it's okay. Don't worry. It's not the end of the world. You guys are the most. I got to be really honest with you. You're the most. I've actually got. I'm believing some of the best classes that I've ever had here. I mean, I've got people who are motivated, and so I believe that you all are very seriously motivated. So if there's mistakes to be made, don't worry about it too much. Say what? That's fine. That's fine. Again, that's why we're going to go through it all over again, because it is something that you need to really sort of get down. Before we jump into that, though, I want to just have a really quick sort of open discussion here, and I'd like everybody to jump in, because this comes up quite a bit, and I just want to know how you guys feel about. So, how do you feel as people in this room? How do you feel about making photographs for somebody else? Yeah, like people hiring you to pay you to do what they want, not what you want.
Yeah, I like that better.
You like it better?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I don't like going up with the
Girl.
I told that to my portfolio development class because I've written this, and I feel like everyone was like, what the I was like,
I was like,
yeah.
understood. But what if
I was
you're
like,
given
I'm
an
so
assignment that you don't like? Are you still gonna wanna? Are you still cool with doing it? Like if it's like completely against like.
Wouldn't you just
oh, like
not
my
bid on
morals
that?
or something?
I don't know. Like let's say you're doing a fashion shoot and then they have like a bunch of raw meat on set. How would you feel?
Oh my god.
That would be
True.
fun. But then,
I'll try anything.
Wait. No, let's. Because I'll hear the answer to that.
Yeah. It's just like raw meat. It's not like making a statement. It's just like
No,
fashion.
it has something to do. Like let's say you're doing like you're hired to shoot editorial.
Okay.
And it's something based around like animals, and instead of using like live animals, they want to use like raw meat,
like carcasses.
Sure, yeah.
Or how about the Lady Gaga meat?
Or like taxidermied animals, or like
Why?
stuff
I mean,
like
the
that.
taxidermy would be fine.
But, like,
I don't know about the meat shakes. But like, wouldn't you know? I would know that beforehand, though, right?
and then you
Yeah,
wouldn't
you
bid
would
on
Because
it.
I would, like-
because they're giving you this, they're like pitching you this idea, being like, hey, do you want to?
It depends. I would like sell myself if it was for something like amazing. If it was like something,
Like if it was like Vogue.
yeah, like then I would probably do it. No,
If it was like a smaller like
Yeah.
magazine, you'd be like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Huh, Carly, what were you gonna say?
Well, then wouldn't you just not bid on that job, like knowing that, and if
Well,
you
what
were
if it's
comfortable, like
Yeah.
bid on a job that you feel like.
Well, I've got a better one here, so I'm going to throw this out to you. No, because just again, this comes up in this whole conversation. I used to work for a photographer. It was one of my first one of the first photographers I ever worked for, and he had a woman had contacted him and wanted him, she wanted him to shoot her portrait, and he did not want to do it. And so he thought to himself, well, I'm just going to ask for this exorbitant amount of money, and she won't do it, and I'm good to go. So he asked for this exorbitant amount of money, and she said, okay. And so, but then he said to himself, well, okay, I was making all this money, so I was fine. Just. So I'm just curious how we feel about, when money clearly becomes a part.
Yeah.
One of the sort of the issues in all of this, that it's no longer I'm just making my work or that kind of stuff. It's twofold. It's I'm being bought to do this, and it's essentially somebody else. I mean, they may ask you, they may collaborate with you, they may do all that kind of stuff, but 9 times out of 10, I am just hired to realize somebody else's vision. I don't have anything to say about it. So you're looking forward to that part.
Yeah.
So Peyton is more somebody who's like a little bit more fine or art-ish kind of thing. Is that fair characterization to say that about you?
I mean, I don't mind getting hired, but I would much prefer if I had the creative input.
Creative control.
Yeah, the creative.
But with an art director, don't they already have the idea in mind?
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah.
Which is the ultimate irony of all of this is that the person who gets, usually art directors are usually photo assistants, digital techs are the least paid people on set.
Yeah.
But the next in line is usually the creative director or the art director. They're usually, so I work so my boss, essentially during a shoot, is making 1/10 of what I make to be
That's so
shooting.
weird.
Isn't that bizarre?
That's actually really weird to think about. I never thought about that before.
So I've got another sort of interesting story about that. The guy who hired me at Playboy, so his name was Jim Larson. He was a sweet guy. Actually, I completely credit him with launching my career. He had gone to school at Art Center in Los Angeles and had graduated from there and wanted to get a job as a photo assistant. And there was a photographer at Playboy that he was dying to work for, a guy by the name of Dick Fagley. So he gets in his car, he drives across country, shows up essentially unannounced, goes to the Playboy building, introduces himself, and actually gets an interview with Dick. And Dick says to him, your work's nice, all that kind of fun, but I'm completely covered. I don't really need anybody. It's thanks, but no thanks. And so Jim gets back into his car and he drives to New York looking for. He was from New York, and so he goes back home to New York, and he starts interviewing with a bunch of people. Anyway, long story short, he gets a job working for Arthur Elgort. Do people know who Arthur Elgort is? Yeah. Major fashion photographer, still working today. So he's working for Arthur Elgort, and they're everywhere. They're all over the world. They're in Paris. They shoot the collection, the whole 9 yards, right? He does that for a year. And then there's this opening at the Playboy Head Studios here in Chicago, in LA, and in New York, all three. There was an opening in New York at the Playboy Studios for a studio manager position. So he applied for it, and he got it. 6 months later, there is the same job opening in Chicago. He applies for that and gets it. And he's not here for more than 2 months before there's a job opening as an art director, and he gets that.
Wow.
So in the course of a year, he basically goes from trying to get a job as this guy's assistant to being his boss.
That's crazy. Yeah.
There is no justice.
Clearly.
So fun.
So at any rate, no, but that's something that actually I would, say that in all of our thinking to, is also as a career consideration is a possibility. I mean, you guys are all, incredibly well versed in the arts, photographically. The idea that you could actually design and art direct photographic imagery, and again, have somebody else create that for you, that would just be a weird shoe on the other foot kind of thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You could hire me to do pictures to, anyway, it would just, I don't know. I want people to think about that, because I was actually talking to the chair here once about this very idea. And he said to me, I said something about, I make a lot of money creating pictures for other people. And he goes, that's why I got out of it. That's the thing I hated about it the most. Because I didn't want to do pictures for other people. And so I just want to make sure that, again, going down that road, is that something that you guys have actually thought through and are comfortable with, and blah, 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 right? Or in Savannah's case, you're just completely lazy and don't care. The next thing on my list, though, that sort of brings this up that I want to talk about here would be considered work ethic. So what would I mean? When you guys hear the term work ethic, what do you think? Like, what is your work ethic? If I were to ask you that, could you articulate that to me? Okay, you work hard, you work independent.
I like to make everybody laugh.
That's actually, oh no, I gotta be honest with you, that actually could be more important than, there's a stylist I know who's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my whole life. He works more than anybody that I know of. He's really talented, but he gets booked because he's the show.
You want to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Which actually brings up another interesting thing. Who do you hire to work with? If you've got a job on your own. Jared, your job today. Who did you get to help you out? I don't really need names as much as relationships. You get
Best friend.
your friends, exactly, right? So there was a photographer that I went to. I did a seminar once, and he said, and it was really, really, really brilliant. He goes, think about it. You hire your friends to work with you. That's who you hire. That's who everybody hires.
Yeah.
So it's really your job, if you're trying to get in the door, to become somebody's friend. And it usually doesn't start with. It usually doesn't start with the art director, the creative director. It usually starts with the receptionist, because they are the keepers of the keys. They are the gatekeepers. You don't get past them. You don't get to it. The rest is all moot, right? So, there's something to actually be said for, I know every single receptionist in every place I've ever worked with. I bring them, when I bring Christmas gifts to all the art directors, I bring Christmas gifts to the receptionist people too. You just know, again, I know who can throw up the roadblocks and who can sort of grease the way as well, right? So it's just something to be thinking about. But back to the whole work ethic thing. It's just something that, again, I think that you need to really consider in this, because people make decisions based on things like, are you always on time? Are you early? Are you the first one in, the last one to leave? That to me is more work ethic. One of the things that I see it happens, it's one of the worst things that models actually do. In Ural's case, it won't necessarily apply too much. It could. It would be a mistake if it did. But I see models all the time going, how many shots do I have left? How many shots do I have left? How do I have left? And you can tell that they're all just dying to get out of there, and they let it show by asking questions like that, And so, again, it just sets this really, really, really bad precedent. And people, they'll get through the day, but people won't hire them back. So again, in your position, it's never a question of, well, how much longer are we going to go? Or, I've got to call my wife and tell her I'm going to be late. Or, it's none of that stuff. You're in for the haul. And that's just it. Yeah. And especially as a freelancer, you've got no protections at all. The only reason that you get to come back is if you're asked back over and over and over again. Make sense? Okay, so it's just something else to sort of think about in all of this. Punctuality, I can't stress that whole part enough. It's really funny. When most crews get booked, so they'll book you. This happens to my wife all the time. She gets booked and they'll tell her start time is 9 o'clock, but she's expected to be there at 8:45. And it's like, why don't you just say 8:45? They don't. So at any rate, it's just something to sort of think about in that. I can't stress that whole part enough. Personal appearance, yes.
Question. So I know in the film world, if you're a PA, a production assistant, you're expected to be there an hour before the actual call time. Is that the same thing with assistants? Again,
I would ask whoever's hiring me what my real call time would be. I'd say I'd be happy to be there anytime you want. But doesn't it sound ridiculous to say, okay, call time's at 6, you need to be here an hour sooner? Well, that kind of means my call time's at 5, and I'm fine with that. But that was sort of like the thing that Erin was talking about. It was sort of like, the guy just went off the rails. He was the whole time he was talking about 1,000-hour year, and then all of a sudden he gets into this 12-month period thing, which fucks the whole calculation up. And it's just so it's the same thing. Why don't you just tell me you want me there at 4 o'clock in the morning? Okay, I'll be there. Instead of saying, well, I told you 4 o'clock in the morning. Why weren't you here at 3? Well, because you told me 4. I don't know. So yeah, I don't really have the answer to that. I would just say to somebody, anybody, whatever, call time is 4. Is that what time you want me there? Do you want me there or sooner? I'll be happy to be there. I'll be thrilled to be there. Blah, 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 blah. Another thing, just to go back to the work ethic part really quickly for this one. So I shared a lot of assistants in New York with really, really famous photographers. I wasn't a famous photographer, but they worked with really, really famous photographers. And one guy who I did a ton of work with got the chance to work with Albert Watson. So anybody in this room know who Albert Watson is?
Yeah, he called me once.
He what? He calls you?
He called me. Yeah.
He calls you?
Yeah, no, we talked at a photo forum thing, and he gave me some critiques on us.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, he was here. It was last year, right? Yeah.
He's super nice.
So, yeah, he's an amazingly talented guy. Only has one eye. Anyway.
He only has one eye.
He does. He's put out several books, but one of his books that he put out is called Cyclops. And it's because he can only see out of one eye. But he also says that was a big part of the reason of his success was that he always, remember I'm always telling you guys, close one eye to look at something?
Yeah.
He always sees the way cameras see. He doesn't have that dimensional vision that's given by having two eyes. But nonetheless. So the guy, Dylan, gets his chance to work with Albert Watson, and he shows up day one, first day, and goes to the studio, and the studio manager hands him a broom and says, I need you to go sweep off all the dog shit in front of the studio.
What?
And Dylan put the broom down and said, no, thank you, and walked out. Now, I think that was stupidity myself. I would have been thrilled to do any of that for the opportunity to steal everything I possibly could from Albert Watson. Steal metaphorically. I wouldn't be, I'm not lifting his cameras. I want to observe that man, that technique, his clients, his interaction. I want to see that. If you give me that for 2 or 3 months, that's all I need. I don't need to stay there longer than that. But that 2 or 3 months could change my life. So to close that door, again, I would have done anything, of course. So just another thing to think about. Personal appearance. So let's talk about that. What does that say about you?
It's a statement of who you are.
It is a statement of who you are. And to that end, we're going to talk about branding to death next week. But to that end, your image of yourself and the image that you present is also part of your brand, very much so, right? So everybody I'd ask in this room, is the image that you are projecting now your personal, this is how I want to look, feel thing, or is it dictated by your brand? Or are they the same? Is there a conflict there? There's a conflict?
Yep, there's a conflict.
And so what's the conflict?
I dress comfy. Well, not really comfy. I dress for me, but if I'm on a 10-hour set, I'm dressed like professional but comfy. So like running shoes, like comfy jeans, dress for the elements if I'm outside.
Right.
I would do that normally, dress for the weather, but all that just
Right. But would you be sensitive enough to even ask them, is there a dress code?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Yes, but
No, I'm saying not why not. I'm saying, would you be honored enough to actually ask that question before you got there? That would be a really smart thing to do, because there are a lot of places that are. If you work for Annie Leibovitz, you're in black head to toe. No exceptions. She uses her assistants and her digital techs as stand-ins for all the stuff that she shoots. And so that's that's what she expects, and that's what she wears. Victor Skrybneski, really famous photographer here, as an assistant, you were in coat and tie. Coat and tie. Yeah, but he's shooting Estee Lauder, and he's shooting, Bazaar, and he's shooting Vogue. I mean, he had the clientele everybody wanted to have, right? And he was in coat and tie, and he expected his assistants to be in coat and tie as well. Elizabeth. Oh no, it's absolutely that whole thing plays into it, and how are people expecting? What do they expect? That kind of What I will say about women, and that because I actually lived through the transition where it was essentially, as far as assistants go, was 100% men. To the point now where that is simply no longer the case. And the thing about it is that all of us who had sort of gone through that learned really quickly that women are just as strong as men. Women can haul just as much gear as men, the whole 9 yards. So there ceased to really be a division in terms of what you would expect work-wise based on gender. But image does have a huge impact on that. And again, does your image reflect your brand, or does it reflect your personal style, or is it compromise between those two, or how do you see that?
Are you asking?
I am asking you.
Oh God, I don't know. Not right now.
Peyton.
Aren't you as a freelancer? You are your brand.
Yes, you are. That's the point that I'm trying to make right now. So, because the thing is that you, right now, and I think all of you are somewhat aware of this, if not frighteningly totally aware of this, is that you're sort of in this cocoon, for lack of a better way of putting it, here at Columbia, that you could be anything. You can be any way. You could dress any way. You could be, it wouldn't matter. by and large, this collection of people is incredibly, I think, inclusive, in spite of the fact that I know there are exceptions to that. But this is a place where you can truly be anything you want to be, and people really don't judge a whole lot because there's just so much variety here. So, but that is not necessarily going to go forward in that same way. People will make value judgments based on, it's not, again, I think that, she's in art school, he's in art school, yeah, of course, that, but that's a different thing completely than all of a sudden you're getting ready to go to work for somebody, whatever, and get that job. But even more so, once you make that next step where you're actually going to be a photographer and somebody's going to spend $150,000, $200,000 on you to do a photo shoot, and you walk into the office for the meet the first time and they've already told you got the job and they're just like, what have I done? Does that sort of make a little sense?
So not only are we selling our skills as photographers, like these texts, but also like your brand, like yourself.
Totally your brand. And there's also, again, your brand also has to connect with whoever it is you're going to work with. So to some certain extent, you have also got to take their expectations into consideration as well. I guess that's the other part that I'm trying to say. So for instance, Peyton, I've always known Peyton to have green hair, and that is definitely a part of her look and definitely a part of her brand. And I don't know that I don't really believe that would ever cause any issue with anybody that I've ever worked with or anybody else like that. I don't really see it as being like that. You know what I'm saying? So, but I also know that if Peyton was starting out in New York and was trying to actually get a job, that kind of stuff, whatever, that the sort of more magazines that are, I think she would have rougher go of it at places like Vogue and Bazaar with Anna Mature and that whole crowd than she would at places like Flaunt or V or even W and that whole crowd. It would just be like-minded people, right? I mean, I just see Anna Wintour as being incredibly buttoned down. I mean, if you see the people that shoot for her, even Terry Richardson, as well as that whole thing got, whatever, was still, pretty straight-laced kind of guy. And if you look at, Mario Testino, oh my God, it's like, I have this thing about people who wear sweaters tied around their necks.
The coats over the shoulders.
Yeah, that's exact same thing. I have an issue with that, right? So, but I think in his defense, for the kind of clientele that he had, that made a whole lot of sense. And I think he dressed that part. I think he is that part. I think that is his brand. But I think he also dressed that part as well. So, I don't know. Just something to think about. If I was going to try to get a job at Armani, I would probably wear Armani.
So pretty much we have like chameleons then. Like,
Say what?
In like the industry of like freelancing, you pretty much be like a chameleon, like learn to adapt to like your clients.
There you go. I think the camellia mystery thing is a great thing. I really do. I had a good friend, whatever, and he would just never let on anything about who he was or what he was into or anything like that. So half the people thought he was gay, half the people thought he was straight, and it drove all the respective other groups nuts that they couldn't figure it out. But then they obsessed about him and they would talk about him all the time, whatever, and it was exactly what he wanted. He engineered this beautifully. He was really, really, really smart about it. So, yeah. Joe, man of mystery. I can see that working for you. Okay, so personal appearance part. Professionalism, and this just pretty much goes without saying, no matter what your brand is, it's really got to be honed with this sense of you really do know what it is you're doing, this whole professional training level. Most of you guys have done a lot of stuff with me, whatever, so I hopefully have managed to give you something of a leg up, because I don't know that much of that existed here really before us, frankly. But that matters. That matters. Again, we've talked about this in my other classes, but the fact that you know how to speak the language and that the language comes naturally to you, that whole level of professionalism, the fact that you understand on any level. You can do it with a light meter, but you can also do it on screen if you need to. You can, all of those, that whole range of things, and all the tricks that you need to think about in terms of ways to display that, right? So you wouldn't go into a situation as a third assistant, whatever, and try to show off all your skills deliberately. You wouldn't engineer those moments, but the minute one of those moments came up and you had the opportunity to actually show who you really are and what you can really do, whatever, you would jump on that. So again, just thinking about that part. Risk, fear, and insecurity. Tony, I hate to tell you this, brother, but it doesn't ever change. That is the nature of a freelancer. So, but no, we need to talk about that. Are you guys flipped out about this? Do you have fear about this? Do you feel like what you're doing is risky? Is that where the fear comes from?
Yes.
Possibly?
Uncertainty.
Okay. Would you say that you're possibly insecure about the future part of this? So wait, where does the insecurity come from, though? Let me ask you that part. Does it come from feeling like you're not prepared? No, because you are prepared. And getting more so every single day, every single week. I have no doubt about that. Again, there's a driven group of people that I'm fortunate enough to be working with this semester. So, and it's not just been this semester, but I'm just saying, in looking at all of my classes right now, it's a pretty hard driving crowd, and I love that about you guys. So, but at any rate, where does the insecurity come? So it's not necessarily about your knowledge about photography or your ability to shoot something or to be a digital tech, so what is it?
Failing.
It's what?
Failing.
Failing in the sense that you can't sustain things long enough to actually turn it into a career, right? So you run out of money before you can actually do that part, right? Is that kind of what everybody else is sort of feeling? Are there other, Daniel, no, what is it for you? Or is it for you? Okay.
Even just like finding the jobs.
Okay.
How to
Yeah.
like that kind of thing.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like it's so like run by like all the people are already like in those jobs, so it's like hard going in like fresh. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
So you feel like you're always,
Like it's almost like you have to wait till you really do like age to actually get there. Does that make sense?
it does make sense on a certain
Yeah.
level.
Which is, like,
But what's really
kinda
funny is,
true.
no, because I can actually see that from the other side.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I know I can see it from the, well, I'm a little bit older. No, I'm just saying, I understand all of that. I understand all, especially the money part of it. That was the part that I think flipped me out the most to begin with. And I also would agree that, where do you start to look? Where do you go? How do you first start to do that? So how do you get your foot in the door? Say what? Intern is a great way to actually get your foot in the door, but you can't intern forever, but it's a great way to start. Joe.
It's not really entry positions, like a digitech or a photo assistant.
Yeah, well, and that goes, that's a little bit beyond the internship, whatever, but the assistant digital tech part of it is, it's the reason that I begged them to let me teach that class here, and because I think that really, that's the way for me, that's how it worked for me. I got a job as an assistant, because I think it's ludicrous, and maybe this, hopefully this will help and not hurt, but it's absurd to me to think that Columbia, and I'm afraid that some of the powers to be feel this way, is that they are going to graduate, 200 photographers this year, and that those people are all going to go out and immediately leap into a photographic career. They're going to be shooting all the time, and it's just like, they're going to hit the ground running, and that just is usually not the way it really works.
That's just college in general right now.
I would agree with that. Yes.
It's like I know a lot of people who graduated with like different degrees, and it takes them like over a year to actually find a job.
If not longer. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And it doesn't matter what it is. So it's not that I want to dash any expectations that you might have. I think you will get some photo jobs to begin with, but the idea of the digital tech assisting part, what I feel like, and the thing that I will say to you is, I don't care what kind of photography you get into. If you end up being the kid wrangler at the Sears photo studio, you'll hate the job, but it doesn't matter. No, because the issue is that you will still be in photography. You will still stay in photography. That will still give you avenue and impetus to do your own work. And that's what ultimately will get you out of that and get you to move on. But if you go to work at Whole Foods or, I always pick on Whole Foods. And and it's true. Every single class that I have had, every single class that's gone through here, somebody I've bumped into working at Starbucks or at Whole Foods.
Oh my god.
Oh, no, it's both. It's both. So I have nothing against Whole Foods and Starbucks, but I'm just saying the problem with the mentality of, okay, I'm going to get out of school. I'm just going to work I need to save up some money. I just need to work and have a steady job and save up a little money, whatever. I'm going to go to work at Whole Foods and I will get back to my photography in 2 or 3 years. And the truth is, you never will. Every single day you get further and further and further away from it. So that's why, as absurd as the baby wrangler at a Sears photo studio would be, it still keeps you connected to your medium and to your art. So whatever it is, on whatever level, just say what?
I say you could just steal their clients too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right when you leave, just take them.
I love the way you think.
I
No,
used to work at a-
no. That's so totally true. It's like, that's another reason to become a photo assistant. Every really, truly successful photographer I know has assisted usually a really, truly successful photographer. And that list goes on and on and on. If you look at Michael Thompson, he was with Irving Penn. If you look at Craig McDean, he was with Nick Knight. If you look at, the list just goes on and on and on. In a large measure, that's a big part of what it was about, is that when Michael Thompson was working for Irving Penn was doing a ton for Vogue. There was a young PA who was working for Vogue at the time, assistant art director, something like that, whatever. Condé Nast decides that they're going to publish Allure. They're going to start a new magazine. They hired this girl to be the creative director of Allure, and her best friend from shooting all of those years was Michael Thompson, and that's the first phone call she makes. And all of a sudden, he's got the primo account of all time. And it was all, again, this goes back to, we've kind of brought things full circle again here. It goes back to friendships, the things that you can make, the networking that you can do. So to that end, just to say a couple things about the fear and the risk and the insecurity. In my own experience, what I would say, and talking somewhat about directly to Carly's, feelings about, where you get the jobs and all that kind of stuff, whatever. The networking part of it is just critical. And your job, right now, you've got this huge network that exists right here. In this class, all of you people are connected to all of you people. And that becomes key because, and Savannah will know this to be true, she'll speak to this, I'm sure Savannah is already working at Shock here in town, big photo studio. All of a sudden, somebody doesn't show up one day. They call in sick the last minute, whatever. And people go around and say, Savannah, do you know anybody we can get in here really quickly? And all of your phone numbers should have been on her list. No, but I'm just saying, that's how, I've heard this story 100,000 times in my life, that's how people get in the door. So that's not the only way. Again, you attend the events, the lectures that they hold here at Columbia, the ones that they do at the Apple Store, the ones that they do at APA, local chapter here in Chicago. All of that are collectives of people who are like-minded. They are people in the photo community. And those are the people that you need to get to know. So that actually helps. But the one thing that I will say to sort of like, that I want to add to all of this, because for me, I think it's one of the best things, or hopefully one of the best things that I can give to you guys. And it's how you deal with the fear part of this all. And it happens. It constantly happens. I wake up in the middle of the night and go, fuck, I'm running out of money, or I'm never going to work again, or I've just lost that client that's never coming around again. And when that happens, what do you do?
Hustle.
What?
Hustle.
Hustle. And what does hustle mean to you?
Just go back out and connect.
So you start making phone calls again, you start trying to reconnect and all that kind of stuff, whatever. I haven't forgotten the part about how do you actually get your foot in the door. But other things, other people, what do the rest of you do?
Do work, like make more work.
That's my answer. That's exactly, you've hit it right on the head, Peyton. That's exactly what I do. No, because the thing is that the insecurity, all of that part comes from you're feeling like, okay, I'm not doing my job. I'm not being a photographer. I'm not doing that. I'm running out of money. I'm losing that whole part of me, whatever. And then, but if you can actually start doing work two things happen. Number one, it distracts you from that fear because you're thinking about the job that you're actually trying to do. So you're not constantly thinking about it. It's not to say that you won't think about it again that night or the night after that, but at least for that brief period of time, you're not just sitting in your apartment with your cat drinking early in the morning because you're so freaked out. You know? I don't have a cat. Anyway, but no, so that's one upside to it, is that it is the distraction of actually doing that. But the other part of it is that you actually are producing work, and that is the only way that ultimately you will get out of that rut or out of that bind or that position, is if you are generating new work and you can actually get people who maybe haven't been up to that point excited about your new work. And it's a constant thing. So to Carly's thing about getting your foot in the door, the single best advice I can give you in that is to have a portfolio, a physical portfolio. You need a website, that goes without saying, but something physical that you can sit with somebody and talk about. It can be an iPad, it can be a print book. I actually like print books because they're physical. Again, is another opportunity to show branding. You're not showing Apple's branding, you're showing your own. But I love prints. You know, I think all of us as artists probably, I think there's a large crowd in here. Not to say that we're dismissing electronic, but there's something beautiful about a really, really beautiful print. There's something to be said about that. Because what you're trying to do with a portfolio is that it gives you an opportunity to call somebody up, cold call, and say, you know, Peyton, I love your work. I have been following you for 2 years now. Can I please come show you my portfolio? Please, I would love to work for you. I would love to show you what I do. I think it would be a good mix. Can you just give me 10 minutes? That's all I need. Let me please come show you my book. And if Peyton says yes, then I not only get there, but I've got something that sits between us that allows for conversation to happen. That is the other thing that's a problem, I think, about websites. By and large, they'll say, oh, just look at your website. Well, then that's it. The conversation is over, and there's no way you get to spend time with them trying to let them know who you are, something about you, what kind of person that you are in that really short frame of time. You know what I mean? So portfolio is critical, and it's that conversation, because you can call anybody in the world, doesn't matter who it is. You can call anybody in the world and say, I'd like to show you my work. And then, again, if you're continuing to generate new work, your book is constantly changing. So you can make that very same phone call 9 months, a year later to those very same people. I've got some new work I'd really love to show you. You know, can I come by? I promise I'll keep it really quick. Make sense? So that's what I do to deal with the fear and the insecurity part of it all. I go to work. Rejection. Oh, Daniel. Yes. Yep. Back in my day, I did make a whole lot more money. No, what's unfortunate about what's happened is, so it used to be, I have told you this story before, but I'll tell it to you again really briefly. It used to be in the days of film, most commercial clients wanted transparency film. That's what they wanted. And to shoot transparency film, to manage exposure and color and do it consistently was incredibly hard to do. There was only 300-400 people in this country who could do it, and we got paid a whole lot of money to do it. Digital came along, and all of that went out, right out the window. So now there's 300,000-400,000 people who can do it. So two things happened to that. Now, one of the first things is, ironically, there's a whole lot more work now because of e-com. E-commerce has exploded. So it's this gigantic mountain of work that exists. But by and large, it's drop and pop, repetitive, very, very, very low pay kind of work. You know, people who are doing e-com, even Macy's e-com, what you would think would be a little bit higher end, that kind of stuff, whatever, it's $500-600 a day. That's what they pay for it. So that sucks, but there's a lot of that work. So again, to that end, about being able to get out and at least get that starter job that lets you spend some time, build a portfolio, try to graduate into something else, there's more opportunity now than there was when I first did it. So, but then what happened, and this is sort of the kind of the worst part about it all, is that then what happened is that the middle of it all kind of went away. There's so a lot of what was print catalog has now just been assigned to e-com, and so the middle ground of photography sort of began to evaporate. There was much less high-end work, and the people who were doing the high-end work came down and rated all the people who were doing my kind of work. So people like Michael Thompson are now shooting the kind of work that I used to shoot. He was doing it, when he was doing, at his, peak, whatever, he was the $30,000, $40,000 a day guy. I was the $10,000 a day guy. He's now the $10,000 a day guy, and I got nowhere to go. And that is a reality. That part has just happened. But anyway, I don't know that, there's so many other things that can be said about all of that as well. I don't think any of us really have any idea what photography is going to really look like in 20 years, 30 years from now. If you think that it's going to be, what we're doing here right now, I think there's a pretty fair chance that you'll be wrong. I don't know what it'll be, but I don't know that it will be this. I don't think it actually will be this. So at any rate, and who knows what that means. That could be great things for all of us, or horrible. No, there's no way to know. But again, that goes back to the whole risk and fear, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, Jared.
How did you stay caught up with how fast photography was going, like the newer technologies?
It was interesting for me. A lot of the I got into it primarily. Retouching film was how I got into digital. The cameras that existed when Photoshop existed, and a lot of people were using it, and using it really effectively. But there was there was a couple of high-end digital cameras. Phase had really the first serious commercial quality digital camera. All the Nikon and Canon stuff was awful. Inkjet printers back in that day were awful. Dye sub printers were awful. It was just awful. And everybody kept playing with it thinking that, this is going to be the future. And indeed, eventually it was the future, but it was an ugly transition period, really ugly. And it was expensive. I could pick up a roll of film and shoot a roll of film, but to go out and buy a $25,000 camera was a completely different issue. So I got into it through the retouching part of it because I could manipulate my own photographs. So I was scanning film and doing that. And then when cameras finally did reach the point where they were sort of affordable, and the quality, it had to be all about the quality. And then systems caught up. People, there was people who really resisted digital files in the beginning. They only wanted film. And then over the course of about 5 years, it flipped exactly the opposite. People didn't want film anymore. They just wanted digital files. Because digital files are so much easier to deal with. You're not warehousing stuff. Oh my God, the library that they had at the Playboy building here was the size of this room. And it was like the medical libraries where the shelving all stays jammed together and it only opens up for one aisle full. And they had another one in LA that was just as big. So, yeah. Anyway, you could put all of that on a single hard drive right now. I know, it's crazy.
Oh, yes.
So anyway, that's how I ultimately made that transition. And I bought my first camera. My very first camera was a Canon 1DS Mark II for $8,000.
$8,000? What?
But that was a bargain because we were all looking at the H series Canon, Phase stuff, and that was all $25,000, $30,000.
What year was that?
In 2004.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Rip.
I don't know what $8,000 looks like.
Okay, but check this out. I was coming from a world. I used to actually belong. Kodak, I don't know. They didn't really think this through too well. I don't think Kodak had a frequent flyer program that they would give you points for every roll of film that you would buy. And at the height of my film, going through film, whatever, I was doing anywhere from $80,000 to $100,000 worth of film and processing a year. So I had points. I had enough points to get a car.
What?
They didn't offer cars, but so I got like I got like a TV and an air conditioner and a vacuum cleaner and plane tickets, and I just did all this shit, whatever. But the idea of taking $100,000 in film and processing and changing that into an $8,000 camera
Yeah,
was kind of a no-brainer.
that's true. Still.
Yeah. All right. Back to my one last question. Two last questions we got to talk about here really quickly. Rejection. How do you guys take rejection?
Not personal.
Not personally?
I thought you were saying not well.
Wait. No, I need to. I want to go. So I've got a not personally. I've got a
Oh, I don't know.
Joe saying he accepts it. Tyler?
You gotta accept it. Well, I don't like rejection, but I accept it and then I flip it into motivation to do better.
Okay.
So that's how I try to do it.
Okay. Does that always work?
No.
Okay. No. I appreciate it. Again, a big part of this, because what I think we need to get away from is all the platitudes that people throw out about that kind of shit. Oh, just turn your rejection into motivation, you'll be fine. Fuck you. That is so much easier said than done. You know? Oh, that sounds great. All of that shit sounds great. Dr. Kim is one of the premier spin people of all of that in doing that kind of stuff, I think. Turn that into your motivation.
Oh my god.
So we need to know. And it's for me the hardest part, or the thing to think about rejection is that it's never ending. It's never ending. So it's something in. I love the idea that you try to take that and motivate yourself with it. What I typically do is, or I have tried to do, is sort of become numb about it, because it never ends. It never ends. The thing is that you forget because you will have far more rejection in your life than you're going to have acceptance. That's just the nature of this game. So, and then sadly, you don't remember a lot of the acceptance parts. You sort of tend to focus on the bad part and not so much on the good part, right? That's just sort of, I think, human nature. So for me, I just came to peace with it all as best that I could. I would go in, I don't want to say expecting rejection, but not at all surprised when it happened, you know, because it had happened so much. And I can just say that it happens to everybody. I mean, you hear, there are the exceptions ultimately at the end, but if you listen to any actor talk about doing, castings and that kind of stuff, it's years and years and years of rejection before, Tom Cruise became Tom Cruise or Jennifer Lawrence became Jennifer Lawrence or whatever. I don't think either one of those two suffers from a whole lot of rejection issues anymore. But there's a whole wake of people behind them that sure do every single day, every single time they do it, and you just can't let that beat you. You can't let it beat you. So, again, if you can twist it around to motivate you, that's great. I accept it, I think, is a better way of how I try to deal with it. Like I say, I don't want to expect it because I don't want to go into something already feeling like there's no reason to be there, because then that really becomes hard to actually get up in the morning and go do that shit. So I'll throw out the one last thing here, because this sort of comes back to the work ethic a little bit, and then we actually are going to do this bid, I had opened a studio here in Chicago. It was doing reasonably well. It wasn't great, but it was doing reasonably well. And I decided I was going to move to Italy and become a fashion photographer in Italy, that there wasn't enough going on here to do that. So I went to a foreign country. I took, the 3-month crash course of Italian at the local community college. So I knew absolutely no Italian. No, I could say hello, and I could do all the stupid shit that they teach you. I could ask where the bathroom was. I could order ice cream. I could buy a magazine or a newspaper. I could actually ask for both of those. But I mean, that was basically it. I couldn't get a taxi. I couldn't sit down and talk to somebody about creative work and, do you like, whatever. I mean, none of that, right? So anyway, went to a foreign country, didn't know a soul. Actually, that's not true. I did know a couple people there. There was a couple people, very good friends of mine who were there, but they were in the fashion industry. They weren't in the photo industry. And I started making cold calls in broken Italian. So Do you know how shitty it is to get up in the morning knowing that that's in front of you and saying to yourself, okay, I've got to pick up the phone now and I've got to call a complete stranger and then I've got to butcher this language and try to get an appointment to go see them and hope and pray that they give me some response that I can understand enough to know if I do have an appointment or not and when.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
How'd you do it?
Did you ever get better at Italian, or did you ever work with people who spoke English, or how did that?
My Italian got really good in terms of all the stuff I needed to direct. So I could be on set. I had no problem with that. I could nothing really that dealt with that business anymore. That I got very good about that part of it all. But the thing about, anybody who speaks a foreign language, and I fluently, and which I never did, whatever. The thing that you don't have, if you're just sort of like getting by, there's no nuance in your conversation. There's no, you guys know me well enough in this class to know that I love language and I play with it and I use good language and bad language. And it's something that's actually fun for me. That's a part of my brand. And I couldn't do any of that there. That part didn't work. And the other thing that I found in Italy specifically, and again, I don't know what somebody's experience in any other place is like, but what I did know about mine was that when I got there, everybody treats you kind of friendly pretty much in the beginning, but if you live there long enough, you realize that you will always be a second-class citizen because you're not Italian. And that will always be hitting, and it was always hitting me. It was never that far away, and but it took me 10 years to actually give up. Or not give up, but I actually to say, okay, I've had enough of this. But anyway, going back to, I've totally lost my whole train of thought now.
Did you get jobs though?
Oh yeah, that's actually where I started shooting. No, I actually ended up being the stringer for women's wear. So I shot covers of W magazine with Giorgio Armani. Oh no, I shot at Versace's atelier every month. Okay, this is great story. Gianni Versace. Okay, wait, Donatella. Oh, every time we would shoot together, he would be my stylist.
Oh my god!
Oh, I thought, yeah, you guys should know this. So the best, my favorite story, the only true haute couture that I ever saw. I saw stuff on the runway, but actually being made was at Gianni Versace's atelier, and it was he had a mansion that was on there's one street in downtown Milan, Via della Spiga, and he had this insane mansion. It was a building that was like 4 halls with this gigantic courtyard in the middle, and one was his house, and one was his dining room, and then 2 others were where they put together these clothes. Anyway. Going in, there's a girl standing on like a podium kind of thing. It's about like this tall, and it turns, whatever, wearing this white wedding dress, and it's like cascading down on the floor. It's gigantic, and there's like 20 women, all dressed in white lab coats, white gloves, white shoes, white hairnets, the whole 9 yards, whatever, that are hand beating this thing. $200,000 dress, and this would have been in mid 80s. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah, crazy. But anyway, Giorgio Armani and I walking around the streets of Milan shooting pictures, his collection. So yeah, things went really well for me there.
Oh my god! Is anybody watching that assassination show right now? Of Gianni Versace? It's so good. You gotta watch it. Yeah.
Okay. So at any rate, all right. I'm still no idea where I'm at in all of this, but just to throw out a couple of suggestions or ideas here, guys, to tell you it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be insecure. It's okay to do all of that. You just need to hopefully use some of the things we've talked about to try to manage that, to try to channel that into something that will actually be ultimately more positive for you. Again, the one thing that I can say, no matter what, when times get bad, go to work. It will be your salvation, especially if you produce something that you really think is, beautiful and worthy and all that kind of stuff, whatever. There's just no There's nothing that can assuage that fear anymore or get you more excited about doing something that's really, really, really beautiful. So, okie dokie. So we are going to do the bigger of the assignments that you had to start. So I need everybody to do this with me. For you guys who are actually working on laptops, I know you're welcome to work on the laptop part. I think the spreadsheet that I've got will work in numbers. Does it? Did you guys try and do it? It's just that the macro part won't work, so it won't like suck that stuff out. But at the very least, it gives you the information, and then it'll just take you a little bit longer to type it out, but you can sort of like get through it, right? So either do that or jump onto one of the computers here that have actually got Excel on it and go that route. So I'm going to open up the estimate that we are actually talking about. So it was this assignment 310. So I can only say this to you guys. It's really important that you do this with me here today, because if you look at assignment, this guy right here, wait, that is 310. Oh, right here. Assignment 4.1 is to redo assignment 3.10. So if you do it with me right now here in this class, your assignment for next week will be done, and it'll be right, and you won't have to do it. What a nice guy, right? I do this all in my retouching class. You guys who've been in that retouching class know, and it still stuns me the number of people who then don't turn it in. And it's like, we just did the whole thing in class. All you had to do was drop it in the Dropbox. Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the parameters of this guy again. So we're going to say that Chicago is your home base. You're going to do a 5-day shooting in Miami. One assistant is going to come from Chicago. One assistant is going to come from Miami. Digital tech will come from Chicago. The producer will come from Chicago. Hair and makeup will be from Chicago. Stylist from Chicago. Stylist assistant from Miami. Wardrobe is provided. No prop cost in this. 12 shots a day. 2 models per day, both from Miami. 2 days of the shoot will be in a rental photo studio. 1 day will be on Miami Beach. 2 days will be at a rental residential location. You don't have to estimate the expenses for a client or art director, and the usage on this is one-time print North American only. So that's kind of where we're starting in all of this. Makes sense? Okay, so I typically will again start this out doing our 12 shots a day. Now we did this in class last week, and the 12 shot a day in the photo studio, we came out with essentially an hour in overtime for both of our models. You guys remember doing that? It was basically a half hour longer, so it was really 8.5 hours, but that extra half an hour at double time would bump it into 9 hours. So that's where that whole part started out. So did you guys sign that? Did the list make it all around? Did everybody get on the list? Great. It's right behind you. Put your name on it and then let you have it. So I need to keep notes on this. If you've got a sheet of paper, I would actually keep notes on this as well. So we'll just try to figure this stuff out. So I'm going to start with the model part of it first, and try to walk our way through all of this and see if we can't figure out how this job would actually play out. Okay, so for 2 days, again, I've got 2 days, all the models are going to be from Miami. I've got 2 days at the photo rental studio, and I would treat that pretty much like we did the worksheet up on here on this board last week. So everybody's good on that part. We don't need to go through that all over again, do we? Or do we? Okay. I'm sorry? The part where we actually did the time schedule, the 30-minute time schedule, and plugged in the model talent for that part. Here, we'll just do it really quickly, or what it ended up looking like. So if you grab the 30-minute, I said I was going to give you guys my other timesheets as well. Did I do that, or did? Okay. What didn't?
That one.
All right, I'm going to click on this guy and click on yours, Savannah, and just see.
Well, it works on. Hold on. It didn't work on my laptop,
Oh,
but I stole it from the fashion, thing on Moodle. Fashion 2. It worked on that page, but didn't work on this page.
really?
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Because the Fashion 2 one was a page or a text edit, but the other one was an Excel, so it didn't work.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, this is password. Is that? No, this password protection is trying to open my password list, which I've recorded I have no idea how many times. Okay, so this guy did not open up, right?
Hold on, let me double check again.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start this while you're double checking. So again, remember, we talked about doing this before, that the days are based on the photographer, not on the models. The photographer has to be there for every shot, not the model. So setup was going to be for my first 2 days, so everybody can just do this with me. We'll blast through this really quick. So I'm just going to put in, my day's going to start at 8 o'clock, so I'm going to do setup. And it's going to take me 2 hours to actually do my setup. And so I'm going to simply click and drag down like that. Control D will do a down fill like that. So the next one becomes my shot 1. So I'm just going to put in a 1. And then I'm going to do 1 every half hour. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I'm going to do lunch. Lunch again. Start up again with shot 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then I have an hour to strike. So that's basically how I set up my day. Make sense to everybody? So then I know that my model 1 has to be also in my shot 1, so I'm just going to go ahead and put her in right there. And then I'm going to go down. I'm going to have both girls there the whole time. It's more expensive to do that, but that's okay. This is going to be my first bid. I'm going to I would do my first one not at the very dirt cheapest that I can do it. If I need some way to bring it down if they come back and say that to me. So I'm going to do every other model. One girl will do every other shot. So she'll do 3, she'll do 5, she will do 7. She will do 9 and 11. The other girl will do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Then we need to figure in getting dressed. So again, this would be styling. So I'm going back to my model number 1, giving her a half hour to get dressed. I'm just going to call it styling. Hair and makeup for an hour. And then I'm going to simply copy this part and paste it in for my number 2 as well. And then I realized this is exactly what we were talking about before. I've got a problem right here because I've only got 1 hair and makeup person. Did we decide we were going to go with 2 hair and makeup people last time? Is that how we decided to deal with it? Yeah? Okay, well, but that's not the way I asked you. That's not the parameters on the list, so we can't do it that way. So instead, I've got to bring this person in sooner because she needs to start on hair and makeup here. This girl is going to sit there for a half an hour and so that hair and makeup can actually happen here so that I can be on schedule. Does this make sense to everybody? Yeah. So we're good on this? So model number 1 starts at 8 o'clock. Say what?
Is it really 8 or 7?
Yeah, there you go. There you go, right? Well, we all expected you to be here an hour before. Okay, so 8 o'clock, and she goes to 4:30. And so the total time is how much time? It's 8.5 hours. Again, 8 to noon is 4 hours, then to 4:30, so it's 8.5 hours. So I'm going to put in 8.5. And then the other girl starts at 9 o'clock and goes till 5 o'clock. Which is 8 hours. Is that right? Yep, that's right. Okay. So in my total situation here for these first 2 days, and this model situation, again, that half an hour extra right here is going to bump that up to be 9 hours for the to take care of the additional overtime. So in my 2 studio days, so again, I'm going to just write down on my piece of paper for my model days, MODEL days, the 2 studio are going to be 17 hours each. Not each model, but each day. Does that make sense, everybody?
Each day is 7 hours.
Each day is 17 hours. Are we good on that?
What do you mean 17 hours?
Well, if I have this 8 hours right here that turns into 9
Oh, okay.
because of overtime,
Yeah, yeah.
and I add it to this 8, 9 and 8 is 17.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so that's for day, let's just say they're going to be my first 2 days, day 1 and day 2, okay, in the studio. Okay, then we're going to go back. So that part actually worked out pretty well. I'm going to take a look again at the assignment. So I've got, let's see, 2 days in the rental studio. 1 day is going to actually be on Miami Beach, right? So that changes things a little bit. Are we going to work out of the hotel that we're actually staying in Miami? We're just going to walk out to the beach and do it there? Do we have to travel someplace? Do we know? Do you know? Daniel? That's exactly what I'm asking you right now. If we decide to shoot right outside of my hotel, then people just show up and it's just like being in a rental studio. But if they want to shoot at some specific beach, then all of a sudden we're talking about travel. And you do have to pay for travel. So we are not going to shoot right out of my hotel because that's just the insane part of Miami Beach, and you just don't want to be doing that. So we are going to travel, and where we're going to travel is going to be an hour away. So what does that do to our schedule? Well, if we take a look at it, let's go back to our schedule and actually look at it. I am shooting on the beach, so I'm not really lighting a set in the studio, right? So can't one of these hours right here actually be travel? They can. So I'm going to actually put this as travel. And travel. Is there a problem? Exactly. I can't do hair and makeup while we're traveling. So this cannot be how I travel. So I am going to scroll up to the top, and I'm going to, if you click on this row right here to make it active and hit Control-I, it will actually insert a column, and then you can put in 7 o'clock. Select the entire row like this, and then hit, I'm sorry, Control-I, not Command-I. And then I'm just putting in the extra times.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so my travel goes back here to the beginning. So I've got travel here, but that's going to be for everybody. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here and paste it here as well. So then we get to the location and we actually can do hair and makeup, so that part's going to be fine. So the rest of my day will be on schedule like that. But then I get down to the end part right here, and while I'm actually striking, they can be traveling as well. They can be leaving. So you've got to put that hour in again at the bottom here. So all of a sudden now, my model starts at 7 o'clock and she goes to 6. That's an 11-hour day. Oh, it's not just an 11-hour day. It's 11 hours, meaning that 3 hours of that are overtime. That doubles to 6. That's a 14-hour day. Uh-huh. So it's 7 to I'm doing 7 to 6. 7 to 6 with overtime. Sorry. Does that make sense how I figured out that time? right? It's 14 hours. I'm sorry, it's 11 hours. So what you do is, of that, 8 are regular time, 3 are overtime. If overtime doubles, that 3 turns into a 6, 6 and 8 is 14. So on my other girl, it's going to be actually the same. She could actually, because in all likelihood what's going to happen is they're not going to drive. They would actually meet us at the hotel, jump in the motorhome, and come with us. We would all go together. So she actually does the very exact same time. So it's also 14 hours. I just know the shortcuts to move that over, but just do a copy and paste. It'll do the same thing. So my day at the beach is now 28 hours. Make sense? Okay, and then finally on my list here, I've got 2 days that are actually going to be at a rental residential location. And those days are going to be exactly the same day as the beach. It's going to be an hour to get there, an hour to get home, and you're going to have all that time in between. Does that also make sense? Okay, so again, for my 2 days of residence, I've got 28 hours each. Are we good on that? Okay, so that gets us the model part to sort of like begin in here, to sort of begin to think about. We need a quick count of the crew. So my crew, number one, I'm just going to write this part down as well. I've got a photographer. I've got one assistant. I've got a second assistant. I've got a digital tech. I've got a producer. I've got one hair and makeup. I've got a stylist. I've got a stylist assistant. And I have 2 models.
Are they included?
Yes, they are. And that's it. So my total crew is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 are in the crew. Again, I said you didn't need to worry about art directors or clients on this, but typically that would be something you would put into your calculation. But anyway, in our case, because I don't really know who it would be, we'll leave it at that. So 10 are in the crew. Okay, so we've got people who, by and large, are in Miami. And those people, depending on what I need to do this, that, or the other, are basically going to be 5-day people, right? But for the crew for Chicago, I actually have to fly them in. We've all got to fly in, right? So that's going to be 1 day of travel, at least, in, and 1 day of travel out, right? So that's 2 days. That turns this into a 7-day event for the crew from Chicago. When do you fly? That's what you've got to ask yourself. Are you doing a Monday to Friday shoot?
We are.
Yes.
Okay, so we're doing a Monday to Friday shoot, right? So that means that we are flying in on Sunday. Okay, so if you're flying in on Sunday, can you do your location days on if you're starting on Monday?
No.
Why not?
It's too much.
When are you going to pick up rental gear?
We're not.
Well, it's going to be delivered.
So you're just not going to shoot with any gear. You'll just draw pictures. Good luck with that one.
We're going natural.
Wait, so does everybody, wait, no, this is, here, let's think about this. I'm flying in on Sunday. I get to Miami at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. I'm supposed to I'm supposed to get in a car or an RV or both and drive to a location starting Monday morning at 7 o'clock. When do I pick up the gear that I need to do that shooting?
It's being delivered Monday morning.
To who?
There's no one at the
Make your
beach
assistant-
waiting, bro.
Your assistant from Miami can pick it up.
So, that's great. Wait.
Bring it.
When does my assistant from Miami pick up the gear?
The day
The day
before.
before. The day before.
The day before is Sunday.
We can't.
So wait,
It's
no,
Friday.
this is the point that I'm trying to make. So all of a sudden, the gear has got to be picked up on Saturday, and I need, so then I'm paying for Saturday and Sunday. Neither day am I using this gear, and I'm paying an assistant to actually pick it up, and then I probably got to pay him to actually store the shit as well.
So can we do the shoots?
No, I'm just saying, does that make Sunday the best day to start your shooting on?
No.
I don't know.
Well, then
Daniel.
No.
We're all set on those.
That means Monday might.
Rental houses do like a 7-day package.
They do.
So what I figured is that in Sunday morning you go yourself to rent the gear, take it on the plane with you.
But what rental gear place? Do you think Pro Gear is open Sunday morning?
What?
Do you think Pro Gear is open on a Sunday morning?
No.
And also, would Pro Gear even let you do that?
$20 if you.
I would go out on a limb here and say that there is no rental house that is open on a Sunday. Just a guess.
Really open on Sunday there.
Say what?
He said take the gear with him on the plane. I know.
Oh my God, no, you can't do that. You can't afford that.
You'll be
Oh my God, I was gonna say.
No, when I shot for Playboy, when we would go on the road, we had 20, 25 cases of gear at $200 a pop. That's $50,000 in travel for gear. There's no way.
Extra security. They're gonna look through all your
Can you
shit.
go back to the Excel real quick?
Yeah.
At the top.
Yes. The point that I'm trying to make in all this, guys, is remember I said to you last week, you have got to do this on paper. This is why.
It's true.
So setup's still gonna be at 9 o'clock. You wouldn't travel and then start setting up immediately?
I'm going to travel, but when in here have I got time to pick up gear?
So
You
we're
have to have it
rescheduled the shoot
ready.
to start on a Wednesday.
You've got to think about this. Again, Sunday would be the day that, okay, so, but we could possibly flip this. My studio days, I've given time to set up in the morning. Why wouldn't I start Monday as my in-studio day and Tuesday in-studio? Then I've already got gear that I can rent from the studio and simply pack it up at the end of those days. So, but I've got to let my producer know that I'm actually starting in the studio, that I have to start there on Monday morning, that I cannot start at some rental location on that. And all of a sudden they find out, well, the only day you can shoot in the rental location is on Monday and Tuesday. And then it just... This is the part that I'm trying to get. This thing can go spin out of control wildly, really, really, really quickly. And the consequence, you can always do the job. A very good friend of mine, really good friend of mine, we were living in Italy, and he got tickets to the opening night of La Scala. And I was just like, I was floored. And I was like, Will, how on earth did you do that? And he looks at me and he goes, Verser, don't be stupid. It only takes money.
Oh yeah.
So I can do any of these shootings that you want done. It only takes money. But you've got to, this is what I keep saying here, we've got to work through this part. So that's going to be the plan that I'm going to make. If we fly down on Sunday, we can shoot Monday, Tuesday in the studio, and that gives me time. I just need to show up at the studio at 8 o'clock and start lighting. I've got 2 hours to get it set up. Most photo studios, and this is true of all the studios in New York, all the ones in LA as well, they not only rent gear, they want you to rent their gear. They won't let you use anybody else's gear in their studio. And then most of them will rent that very same gear to go out. So just something to be thinking about. So it's set up perfect for me, right? I would make sure at the very least that we found a studio that did have a rental gear operation with it so that I'm not having to deal with 2 sets of people or 2 possible abilities there. Carly.
Is this also stuff that like a producer would be putting together, or
A producer's going to handle a lot of the phone call stuff and all of this, but I'm the one who's got to come up with it because I've got to come up with my gear list. I've got to come up with all of that stuff. So, but yeah, it would be. Yes.
I was doing this assignment and I saw that like some studios have their own assistants. That
Yes.
have for real,
Yes.
So you can like have like a 3-in-1 package deal.
There you go, but I don't think you get a deal on any of that. I think they just have available people.
It's just like some random guy from down
all
the
right
street.
there rather
Yeah.
than having to search someone.
Oh, exactly, which would be great.
Who already knows the gear.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so are we sort of good where, okay, so if I do Monday, Tuesday, then Wednesday could be at the beach, Thursday, Friday are going to be at the location. Again, depending on where the location was, am I going to try to fly out on Friday night?
Probably not.
I've got a crew of, half of my crew is coming in, so we'll see what that one extra night will cost. But you can see that that would actually be, again, another place where you could, if you bid in a hotel room for that night, you could actually take it out. We all just get on a plane, do the red eye back on Friday night, whatever. Who likes doing that? Nobody, right? When's the wrap party?
Exactly.
Right? Okay, so in terms of our Chicago crew, one assistant is Chicago, the photographer is Chicago, the digital tech is Chicago, the producer is Chicago, hair and makeup is Chicago, styling is Chicago, models and the assistant, styling assistant, and the second photo assistant are all local. That gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people that are traveling, and 4 that are local. All right, what else do we need to figure out about this guy? We're sort of getting the parameters going here, so I know where we're going. That takes care of this. The producer part takes care of hair and makeup. That's good. Styling, that's fine. Fine. Don't worry about wardrobe or propping. But again, if you had wardrobing and propping, that would come into play. One of the things that people forget here a whole lot, in my case, I'm having my client actually send clothes down, but is actually shipping wardrobe. It's crazy. If you're actually ever working in Miami during the season and you're at any one of the hotels, there's just rolling case after rolling case after rolling case comes into every single hotel all morning long, and it's all wardrobe. But that's all got to be paid for. So is that something that you're taking care of or that the client's taking care of? I'm just going to assume the client's taking care of that. But if not, you would have to figure that part out. The talent we've got there is fine. The rental's fine. The day on the beach is fine. The residential's fine. Okay, so I think we're ready to actually begin this guy, and we'll see what else comes up as we go through this. So I'm going to go back into Tyler.
Where did you get the 6 person from for traveling? Do you count yourself as a photographer?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, you gotta have a ticket.
Takes the photo in the wrong state.
We got everybody in place. The only thing we forgot was the photographer. Damn.
Are you using the same 2 models for each day?
It won't really matter as long as they keep the same rate.
What about, did they like say if they're adults or minors?
Oh, again, I didn't put any of that in, and I also didn't say if we're doing lingerie or anything like that. So we'll talk about those rates when we get down through this, and we'll actually just take a look at how that would impact this stuff, Daniel.
We also need to like put the whole crew in the schedule, not just models.
Oh, well, they're all working for me, so if I'm there, they're there.
But we need to like list what they're doing, like
You know, the one thing that I would do, because the other thing that'll trip this up, if you take a look at this schedule right here, what can screw you up in this, and it's really not, it won't affect the assistants and it won't affect me because I've built this schedule based on me. So where did I lose all the ones? Oh, there they are. Sorry. It's all justified over. It's all based on me, so I know my time has been accounted for. But things that can screw up in here, for instance, when we go back and start back to lunch right here, hair and makeup and styling can't actually be doing this here because right after lunch, you actually have to go through hair and makeup again for half an hour to touch that up, and then they need to get dressed in their next outfit. So the truth of the matter is this part can't really happen right here either because this girl right here, she is, to get her back on set, she's got to be styled right here. And she has to have hair and makeup here. So lunch actually for her has to happen here. And then you have to ask yourself, is that okay? Do I actually have enough time here? So it means I've got to bring lunch in even a half hour earlier than that. And then I would actually lay it out for my hair and makeup person to make sure that, again, I didn't have another one of these problems happening where I'm doubling up and expecting her to be doing 2 things that she couldn't do. Does that make sense? Yes. Oh. But in our case, I'm okay right now as far as the styling part of it goes because the stylist can actually eat lunch while the hair and makeup person is actually redoing, and then the hair and makeup person can actually eat while the stylist is actually getting her dressed. So they're okay. The only thing tricky here would be the model, and it just means I got to bring lunch in a half hour earlier. So, but again, this will tell you right here. And by the way, just something to know. Every stupid fucking producer in the world does this. They'll look at a schedule like this and say lunch at 12:30. We'll tell catering to be there at 12:30. Catering takes a half an hour to set up, so you get lunch at 1. If you want lunch at 12:30, you've got to get them there at 12. but not one of them knows that. Anyway, they're all stupid as shit. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
The hair, makeup, styling after lunch. You really give an hour for that?
Oh, yeah.
Like half an hour.
Well, no, the thing is that the half an hour, every single styling here, every outfit has got a half an hour to get styled. I just haven't plugged them in.
Mm-hmm.
But every one of them has got a half an hour before it to actually get dressed.
Right.
So that has to exist
Yeah.
because they need to change clothes, whatever. But again, yeah, they need, lips need to be put back on. Hair usually needs to be goosed up again. And it can go really quick. So, yeah. All right, so we ready to try to piece this together? Okay, so let's jump out into our calculator really quickly. So for me, again, depending on the client, this is actually how I would bid this. This 3,500 would probably be more a person like a Lord & Taylor's where I would start this. If I'm doing this for more local, like Perry Scott here, I would probably drop that down to 3,000. You guys need to pick your own poison. But in my case, I've got a 5-day shoot, so I'm going to leave this at 35. Then in terms of, I do not have a prep day on this, but I do have 2 travel days on this. And I told you this before, travel usually is done at half rate. The reason is that you have to get paid something because the day that you're traveling, you cannot be shooting. So they need to actually pay for your time, but you usually give them a break on that. Most people will actually bid it like this. So I'm going to do 2 days of that because it is 2 days of travel. Then the assistant thing gets a little bit tricky here, and so I'm going to show you the way that I would do it. This is just, you need to know some Excel spreadsheet part. We can do it 2 different ways, and I think this is how I instead of doing the tricky math, I think I'm going to show you a different way that I would actually do this. For assistants, digital tech, hair and makeup, well, hair and makeup will be different, but we'll start with assistants here. So I'm going to do for my assistant, and I'm going to split them into 2. So my first assistant is actually coming from Chicago, and they are traveling 2 days and a 5-day shoot. So it's 7 days total for them. So I'm going to put in a 7 because you do not give them half rate for travel. And then that person's actually going to be $350 a day. Some of these rates need to be updated. You can see this calculator was originally done in 2007. These rates need to be updated a little bit, but nonetheless, we'll get there. So for the hair and makeup person, the way you would figure this is that they're also coming from Chicago. I've got 5 days at full rate and then 2 days at half rate for travel. That is the same as 6 days at full rate. Does that make sense? So I'm going to put a 6 in here, and when I tab over to the next one, this is again what I was talking about. This is paying her $800 a day plus agency fee. So that's why you have this 1.2. That 0.2 accounts for 20%. So again, that's how it would be worked out. So 20% of $800 is $160, and that 160 plus 800 is $960. That's where this rate comes from. Make sense? Then the same thing actually is going to come down here for my stylist. And again, the thing that you need to think about in this is that, hang on just 1 second. If we had props or we had other wardrobe that we needed to get, you need to book time for the stylist to do that. So am I going to, let's say I needed, for the day at the beach, I needed a bunch of surfboards and blow up, inflatable animals and that kind of shit. I needed that for that day, whatever. When does she buy that stuff and where? So I'm not going to buy it in Chicago and take it down there. So I'm going to have her do it down there. When does she do that? Well, we're flying down and starting to work the very next day. She is actually going to have to go down at least a day early to do that, which means I add another day for her, plus another hotel for her, plus another per diem for her. When does she do the returns? Or do I get the stylist assistant to do those returns? Yeah, I'm going to get the stylist assistant to do the returns because she's cheaper than my stylist, whatever. But that means I'm going to have to add another day on the end of the job for the stylist assistant to take this stuff back. So again, you have got to, this whole thing about doing this on paper, you can't let any of this go because if all of a sudden you bid this and you get it, and then all of a sudden all these additional charges start kicking in because you didn't anticipate, oh yeah, we needed the surfboard. I forgot I put in money for the prop, but I didn't put any time to get the stylist to get it. Gabby?
No.
No. I don't have two. This is only one assistant. This is my first in Chicago only. I'm not going to try to build in my second assistant in this yet. I can do it here, but the math is just too complicated. So it's easier for me right now, if you want to stick with assistants, let's go down to the very bottom of this to where it says untitled, unnamed expense, and put in second assistant. And come over, the second assistant is only for 5 days. And that's going to be at $300 a day. They're cheaper than bringing the one from Chicago. So it's just easier to do it that way than it is to try to put them all into one single line. I can do it, but I will lose you guys on spreadsheet construction would be my guess.
You did 7 days because you're coming in and after 2 days.
The first assistant gets travel, and they get full rate for travel. So it's flying down on Sunday, flying back on Saturday, and Monday through Friday shooting.
Is that always a thing?
Yeah, I said it's always assistants always get full rate. They don't get half rate for travel. Yes.
How lenient are clients with additional fees or charges?
What do you mean?
So say if you did forget to plug in for the,
They get pissed.
They would be pissed.
Very pissed.
It's always better.
A lot of times they'll actually try to put it on you and make you eat it.
I didn't agree to this. Why am I paying?
Mm-hmm. No, it's awful. It can be awful, but that's okay. You guys have got a serious checklist here. We're doing pretty good. Okay, so I'm getting down to stylist now. I don't need the stylist to be anything extra, whatever. So she's going to be 6 days as well because they do pay. They only get half rate for travel. Again, the higher price people get paid half rate for travel. So again, she's going to be at 750 times the 1.2. That takes in the agency fee. The production coordinator. We talked about this before. The production coordinator typically gets all the shooting days plus another set. So it's double, you just double your shooting days. It's not a guarantee. You would, if I was seriously going to do this, I would be in touch with the producer and say, I've got a 5-day shooting in Miami. Here are the parameters. Give me an estimate for what you need to do this job with. But it just is a rule of thumb. A day of pre-production or post for every single shooting day is a good figure to work on. Yes?
Would you do a local or
Oh, absolutely not.
producer from?
Oh, no. This is a person, because she's got to take care of all the travel. She's got to take care of everything else. So, no, I wouldn't. You've got to know them.
Okay, so you're saying you would use your own person?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is a team member. This is somebody I want to know. Just like hair and makeup, I want to know. Styling, I want to know. Models, I don't have to know, but I would know those. Gabby?
So, did you miss the stylist?
Oh, I don't have... I don't have... Oh, I've got the stylist. I haven't done the assistant yet.
So that would just be 5 days.
No, but she has to return.
So for the assistant, but I don't have anything to return. Right, so again, so the stylist assistant is only going to be 5 days unless, and again, this is all how you do it. When are they going to actually prep all these clothes? When are they going to check all this stuff in and know that they've actually got the wardrobe that they need? Say what? Oh, the whole 9 yards. When is that all going to happen, right? So, before we start, right? That's when you hope it would happen, right? So, I'm going to fly my stylist down on Sunday morning. She will get there at noon. Then she's actually got a working day. She's actually going to be checking in wardrobe for that day to make sure that we're ready to go in the morning. And her assistant is going to be there with her. So the 6 days now changes to 6.5 because she gets the 1/2 day of travel, but she's got 6 full working days because I'm putting her to work on Sunday, right? So that goes to 6.5. Then that takes the stylist assistant to 6. And again, I wouldn't do $250 for her. I would throw 3 at her. So that's where we'll start for that. Are we good so far on this? So this happens to me all the time. As you're going through these things, you're starting to think, and it's like, oh, okay, really, we do need the clothes prep. Fuck, I need to make sure that the clothes even got there. Because it's a big problem. Clothes do not show up all the time. Oh, it's insane. It's insane. The reason this happens is that most time they are only working with samples. There's stuff that doesn't actually exist yet. And samples always get tied up in customs. Samples get caught and they get lost in the mail. It's a nightmare. But at any rate, welcome to my hell. Okay, so for the production coordinator, I am going to put in 10 days, 5-day shoot and 5-day either prep or post. For my digital tech,
Your production coordinator's travel days.
oh, thank you. See? No.
Oh my god.
No, so we'll do 11 for that. I would do, again, half days for travel, plus, again, the normal fee. So if she was just going to be doing a 5-dayer in Chicago with no travel, it would be 10 days, but she gets an extra day for the two travel days. Makes sense, 2 halves. Okay. Again, that's right there. That was a $750 mistake. Yeah. So for my digital tech, again, at this stage of the game, this is a little bit tricky, whether you pay them at half rate. They're sort of in that middle rate for that middle part for travel. I'm going to go ahead and put it in at 6, but I'm going to bump it, and I'm going to actually take them to 550. So again, 5-day shoot, 2 half days of travel. So that's what I'll throw out for the digital tech. For digital production charges, we'll see how this goes, but I've got 60 shots is what I'm actually planning on doing. So it would be a per shot regardless. And even if I take this down to $20, that's still going to be $1,200. That seems like a good place to leave that. I'm not going to do any retouching or post-production in this. Hard drive delivery is a standard for me, so I'm going to put in 1 hard drive for that. We are not going to do any film and processing, but now we get down to talent. Daniel. Digital production charges are essentially what replaced film and processing as a profit center to replace your gear. So again, there's a PDF on here on our website that I've asked everybody to read. And it is this justification of digital charges right here. But it's basically your camera, your digital camera has got a certain lifespan to it. A typical, if you're shooting truly the very highest end of cameras in any one camera line, like the 1DS line for Canon, the shutter accusations that they will give you is on the order of 300,000. So after 300,000 pops, your camera's toast. For the 5D series, it's half of that. It's 150,000. How do you replace that $3,000 camera that you wore out for a client? You charge them for digital captures. That's how you do it.
That's the overhead.
Charge that by the shot?
I do by the shot, yeah.
So you shoot 200 times, you won't put up the
Say what?
So you shoot 200 frames.
No, it's got nothing to do with this is number of shots. I'm doing 60 shots, not 60 frames. I've got 12 outfits a day for 5 days. That's 60 looks. There'll be 50 to 100 frames of every single look, so it'll be well beyond that. The thing is that what you don't want this to look like is that you're gouging somebody. In the truth of this, when you see what the total of this is ultimately going to come out to be, I would be shocked if this was more than 1% of the total bill on here. But we'll see. But again, it's another thing that you can pad in to take out. Because frankly, to be honest with you, if you really look at this right now, my fee alone is going to be $17,500. Would I really not do the job because they wouldn't pay me the $1,200 digital capture fee? Probably not. Okay, so for talent, what we're going to do in here, the easier way of, well, actually, we have a good number here. So this is the way you can actually use cells inside to do the math for you. So in our talent under adults, put in an equal sign. That's how you start it to, you can add all this up. I'm looking right here. I've got 17 plus 17 plus 28 plus 28 plus 28. I can add that up on a calculator. Or I can do it in this cell. And in this cell, it would be equal 17 plus 17 plus 28 plus 28 plus 28. And hit the return key, and it will tell you that that all totaled up is 118 hours of model rates. Now, in this case, at $200 a day, $200, that's a girl who's making $1,600 for an 8-hour day. that rate should double.
I'm sorry. How,
An 8-hour day times 8 times 200 is 16. That's a girl who's making $1,600 a day. Good luck finding that.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Hey.
Oh. Very, 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 very famous line that came from Victor Scribnesky's. You guys really got to look up who he was. From his studio manager. And his studio manager, Tom Mate, is another pretty famous photographer here in Chicago, was Victor's assistant, and he was beginning to get work on his own, and he went to oh god, I'm not going to remember her name. Anyway, I'm not going to remember her name, but nonetheless, he goes to Victor's studio manager slash rep studio manager, and he said, "This model's she's charging more than I am." And she looked right at him and she said, "Honey, if the girls aren't costing more than you, it's not a job worth doing." So the truth of this is, realistically, probably a closer figure that we would be looking at would be $3,000 a day for a model. So if we take 3,000 and divide that by 8, we get 3, 24, 6, 8 into that is 7, 56, 375 an hour. So you change this 200 to a 375. And again, that 1.2, that is how you add. If it was just a 1, it would be the same, but the 0.2 actually adds the agency fee. That's a 20% agency fee. If for some reason it was a 25% agency fee, you would change that to a 25. If it was a 30% agency fee, that would be a 3. A 50% agency fee would be a 5. So in our case, it's a 2. Tyler? I added up the models that we figured out. Do you have a calculator on your phone really quick?
Yeah.
Try this. Remember, the first thing we did was figure out our models. Day 1, 17 hours. Plus day 2, 17 hours. Plus day 3, 28 hours. Plus day 4, 28 hours. Plus day 5, 28 hours. 118. I just did it inside the cell. So right off the bat, I'm at $53,000 for talent. And this is true. You guys look at this shit and say this is fantasy. It is not.
So like every
Same thing.
so like
Oh, exactly the same thing. Mm-mm.
I just feel like you make so much money. How
Welcome to the real world, right? Okay, so wait a second. So let's say that there is, well, because we'll just throw this out here. I'm just going to add. Let's say that there were out of those 60 outfits, 10 of them were actually lingerie, relatively skimpy bra and panty stuff. Okay, so you guys need to know that different rates work different ways. If a girl is wearing something she's completely clothed, whatever, blah 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 blah, it's her standard rate. As things start to get skimpier or more transparent, that changes. So typically, it's hard to say, but in most agency cases, they will do double rate for like bikini thongy kind of stuff. If it's more like old lady swimwear with cover up and that kind of stuff, they might do that at time and a half. But certainly for really skimpy, that kind of bathing suity kind of whatever, it would be double time. And in our case, for doing lingerie, again, most lingerie at the minimum is going to be double time. If it's really transparent and you can truly see through it, it's triple time. Nudes are also triple time. So in our case, we need to figure out that additional part. But here's something that you need to figure out because this will screw you guys up. That is set time. That is not girls sitting around in a bathrobe getting her hair and makeup done time. That is not billed at double rate. That is billed at single rate. So you've got to go through and figure this out. So I just said it's going to be 10 shots, right? Every one of my shots is a half an hour. Does that make sense? So, and it's double rate. So what I have to add in this It's not for the whole day. It's not or shooting 3/4 of the day or any of that kind of stuff. Basically, it's the additional rate to cover that 10 hours of set time, right? So again, I would go down here to the bottom to my unnamed expense and do lingerie rate. Or lingerie, we got to name it lingerie model fee. Be a little bit more explicit about that. It is 10 hours. That's what we're going to actually, no, it's 10 outfits. So it's actually 5 hours. It's 5 hours. And then it's going to be, again, at that exact same rate that they had before, because, again, it's double time. I've already charged the first of the rates. I'm just adding, this is now the, like, overtime, for lack of a better way of putting it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so, again, it would be an equal sign, 375 times 1.2. And again, you'll still see, again, that turns out at $450 an hour, which is the very same thing that the model rate was up here. If you took a look at the model rate, you could have just put in that $450. So again, in lingerie cost alone, that's added another $2,250. Okay, let's see where we're at here and see if this isn't going to be a good time to take a break. Yeah, we should take a break right now. So, wait, don't, because you don't want to lose this work. Okay, so to fix this whole part out right now, whatever, I'm going to come up to the File menu, down to Save As. I'm going to go to my desktop really quickly, just to put this here. So, on my desktop, I'm going to, look at my guy up here, I'm going to create a new folder, and this folder is going to get the job number. So I don't know when this thing is actually going to happen, so I'm going to give it to it today. So it would be 20180215 underscore, oh wait, I take that back. I'm going to start it with the client code. So the client code would be, if we're going to do it for Carson's, or I was going to do it for Lord & Taylor. Let's do it for that, LOR. Because I kept my $3,500 rate. So that is going to be the name of the folder. I'm going to go ahead and create that folder. And then this US invoice calculator gets that name put in it. And you can see that there's an extension at this end, this .xls. That's how I know it's the spreadsheet to do this. And then I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I've got, like, guys, if we can be back at 10 after, that'd be great.